Hello and welcome to Fireside Fairytales. If you've never been here before, my name is Rory and you are watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel, a cozy little corner of the internet for narrative. And what I'm doing here today is I'm reading old folklore and fairy tales with a bit of music and sound effects in the background. And if you are watching this live, you should know that there is a live chat growing a little crop of potatoes right now that includes Tammy Morelli, Jumstore, GS, Uncle Kitty, perhaps more because YouTube has decided to do that thing again where it doesn't let you have your own name, it just lets you have the @ name. Uncle Kitty mentions that the crowns are gone. So the crowns, it turns out, was a setting, but it was a setting I could only change when I set up the stream, so I turned it off. And then I used an old stream as a reference that had it on, and it came back. But then when I looked for it today, I didn't find it. And it's not on, so maybe it just wasn't popular, which is good, because it wasn't good. It was a bad idea, and I didn't like it. Anyhow, yeah, I remember when, what was the name of I was on it too, Google's social media. When they did that, where they forced a bunch of people to change their YouTube names to match it, and it had to be their real name too. I mean, this is borderline old man talk now. It doesn't feel that long ago, but it must have been at least 10 years. Also, if you don't want to hear any of this, and you're like, why is this man not telling stories? Down in the description below, there will be timestamps, but unfortunately only when the video is no longer live. So if you're watching it live, I am sorry. I won't be much longer here. I don't have much to say today. I only really have the one story to read, but it is a longer story. A little more meaty than we had last week. Tammy has lost 37 pounds in September. Congratulations, Tammy. I'm sure it's all the folklore. Tell your friends. It's the best way to lose weight. Scientifically proven. Goal is 100 pounds. I mean, my goal is 100 pounds, but it's not happening. Okay. I don't think there's anything else I need to address in the chat. What are we doing tonight? We are reading Soria Moria Castle, which I've definitely read personally before. And that threw me off because I just could not, I could not find any evidence that I've read this before in the stream. So it must have been something I read. And then I was like, well, maybe not for this stream. And then I forgot that I didn't read it for a stream. It is, like many things that we read, especially the longer ones, a collection of familiar story forms. It has some stuff that it has a few pieces that you're going to recognize, and then as per usual, it weaves those things together in its own way. But anyways, for people who are fans of this, hello, why are we not focusing? There we go. Anyways, for people who are fans of this, you're going to recognize pieces of this story as we go through, because that is very much how, frankly, all narratives are built, but in particular, old folklore is built. And so, because it is going longer and because of all of that, also let me know if there's any troubles with the audio. I noticed when I was listening back last week, it was buzzing a bit. So I've dropped the audio levels a bit. Hopefully that has helped. It's weird because it doesn't buzz on the recording, which is the way that I can check it. But then sometimes it just buzzes for YouTube, and I don't know. Whatever it is that makes the difference. Something about the encoding, I assume. All right. Now, as far as the title of the video, I said this is about a stupid and lazy hero. Now, that's not even really a judgment from me, per se. That does seem to be the angle that the storyteller seems to expect you to take, that it's surprising that this person does anything, because they are very lazy, apparently, and kind of stupid. So before we read the story, one thing I will say is something I've said several times before, but has a little relevance in the beginning of the story. Askeladden is the name of the boy. And Askeladden, as I mentioned, according to Simon Roy Hughes, and there's no reason to doubt it, is basically a placeholder name. So we've read a lot of stories with an Askeladden, and it doesn't mean they're the same character. That's the first clarification I always like to offer. But the second clarification I'd like to offer is that Askeladden is similar in meaning to Cinderella, as I understand it, in that it is about a cinder. It means that they're a low station. So Cinderella is like Cinder Girl, the girl who keeps the cinders going in a fire and so on. It's a pretty lowly, low skill job. So in this case, Askeladden is making a similar kind of frame of it. In other words, when you see in folklore that either the name Cinderella, which obviously we have a very famous association to, but it comes up a lot in folklore stories outside of the story form that you would know it for, Cinderella for. Cinderella and Askeladden, what those terms are doing is framing for you early on that this is an underdog. And exactly what makes them an underdog, you'll see. But the story seems to think they're lazy and stupid. So, with all of that said, our first and only tale tonight comes to us from the complete Norwegian Folktales and Legends of Asbjornsen and Moe, translated by Simon Roy Hughes, which is a modern translation of basically everything they ever put out. It comes in 3 volumes. I have the annotated version, which I really think is worth it. It's translated by Simon Roy Hughes, who has self-published it and funded the translation of it through a Patreon. It's a very modern story of translation here. In other words, you should buy it because it is very good. It's a solid collection. Probably the best translation you'll find of those particular works. And to buy it, there will be a link pinned in the comment below. And this story, of course, is Soria Moria Castle, and it comes from that book. There was once upon a time a man and his wife had a son, and they called him Halvor. From the time he was just a small boy, he would do nothing but sit and rake about in the ashes. So you see, there's that Askeladden reference. Right. His parents apprenticed him to masters in many different trades, but Halvor never stayed long. Each time, after only a few days, he would escape his master, run home, and sit himself in the earth to rake the ashes again. One day, however, a skipper came to visit, and he asked Halvor if he would like to go to the sea with him and visit foreign lands. Yes, Halvor wanted to go, and it didn't take him long to get himself ready. I haven't heard where they sailed, but after a long while, a fierce storm blew up. And when it had passed, it was still again. And neither of them knew where they were. They had been driven towards a foreign coast that was familiar to neither the skipper nor Halvor. Since it was so still that not even a feather stirred, they remained here, and Halvor asked the skipper for leave to go ashore and look around, for he'd rather do that than remain there sleeping. "Do you think you should show yourself?" asked the skipper. "The only clothes you have are those rags on your back." But Halvor persisted, and was allowed at last. But he was to return when the wind began to blow up. So off he went, and it was a beautiful country. There were great plains of fields and meadows everywhere he went, but he saw no people. And then the wind began to blow up. But Halvor didn't think he'd seen enough yet, and he would like to go a little farther to see if he could find some people. And after a while, he came to a great highway, which was so even that he could have rolled an egg along it. Halvor followed the road, and as evening drew on, he saw a great castle in the distance, and it gleamed. He'd been walking all day, and he hadn't taken any food with him, so he was terribly hungry. But the closer to the castle he drew, the more afraid he grew too. The fire burned warm in the castle, and Halvor went into the kitchen. Which was as fine a kitchen as he had never had seen before. There were vessels of gold and silver there, but not a person to see. After Halvor had stood there for a while, and no one had come out, he went to the door and opened it, and inside sat a princess spinning at a spinning wheel. "Can it be?" she cried. "Dare a Christian come here? But it would be better for you to leave, else the troll will devour you, for a troll with 3 heads lives here." Just as a pause before we move on, there's going to be a bunch of references to Christian men and Christian here. And I do want to be clear, they do mean it in the religious sense, but what they really mean is that it's not like a fayish monster. In other words, they mean like you're civilized, you're of society. You're not going to be some crazy monster. That's really what they're meaning. "He may as well have 4 for all I care. I'd still like to see the fellow," said the boy. "I will not leave. I've done nothing wrong. But you must give me something to eat, for I am terribly hungry." After Halvor had eaten his fill, the princess invited him to try the sword that was hanging on the wall. And no, he could not swing it. He could not even lift it, for how heavy it was. "Well," said the princess, "you should take a draught from the bottle that hangs beside the sword. That is what the troll does when he goes out to use the sword." And Halvor took a drink, and immediately he could wield the sword as if it were nothing, a feather at best. The troll could come at any time now, he thought. Straightway he swept the troll, and Halvor hid himself behind the door. "That smells of the blood of a Christian," said the troll as he put his head in through the doorway. "Yes, you should be careful of that," said Halvor, chopping off all the troll's heads. The princess was so glad to be saved that she both danced and sang, but when she began to think of her sisters, and she said, "Oh, I wish my sisters were saved too." "Where are they?" Halvor asked. So she told him. One was held captive by a troll in a castle that was 60 kilometers distant, and the other was captive in a castle that was 90 kilometers beyond that. "But first," she said, "first you must help me to get rid of this carcass." For Halvor was strong, he swept up everything and made it all clean and tidy in no time at all, and then he took his ease. At daybreak the next morning, Halvor stepped off. He was impatient, and he walked and then ran the whole day. When at last he saw the castle, he grew afraid again. By the way, the implication there seems to be that he moved 60 kilometers in a day? I mean, he ran, I guess, but that's a lot. It was much more splendid than the first, the castle was. Again, there was no person to see. Halvor went into the kitchen, but he did not stop there. He went straight in. "Well, dare a Christian come here?" the princess cried. "I don't know how long it is since I came here, but in all that time I've not set eyes on a Christian. It would be best for you to leave again, for a troll with 6 heads lives here." "No, I will not go," Halvor said, "not even if he had 6 more heads." "He will take you and devour you alive," said the princess. But she could not prevail. Halvor would not leave. He was not afraid of the troll, but he wanted food and drink, for he was hungry after his journey. No kidding, it was a 60-kilometer run. Yes, he was given as much as he wanted, but then the princess again begged him to leave. "No," said Halvor, "I'll not leave, for I've done no wrong, and I've nothing to be afraid of." "He will not ask you about that," said the princess, "before he takes you without judgment or sentence. But since you will not leave, try to wield the sword that the troll uses in battle." Well, Halvor, like before, could not wield the sword. But the princess instructed him to drink from the bottle that hung by its side, and once he'd done so, he could wield the sword. And straight away in came the troll. It was so big and huge that it had to go sideways through the door, and when the troll got his first head in, he cried, "Ha-ta-ta! It smells the blood of a Christian." And Halvor immediately chopped off the first head, and thereafter all the others as they peered in. The princess was so glad that she hardly knew which foot to stand on, and then she began to think of her sisters, and she desired that they too should be saved. And Halvor thought it could be done, and desired to set off immediately, but first he had to help the princess dispose of the troll's carcass. And so he set off the next morning. It was quite a distance to the castle, and he both walked and ran to arrive in time, and when in the evening he saw the castle, it was much more beautiful than either of the other two. Now he was not the least bit afraid, but he went straight through the kitchen and straight in. And there sat a princess who was beautiful beyond measure. She spoke in the same manner as the other two, that there had not been a Christian there since she had arrived, and she begged him to leave again, else the troll would devour him. It had 9 heads, she said. Yes, if it had 9 besides the 9, and 9 more besides, I would not leave, said Halvor, and went to stand by the stove, while the princess begged him so passionately to leave, but Halvor refused and said, "Let him come in his own time." And then she gave him the troll's sword and instructed him to drink from the bottle so that he could wield it. Straightway the troll swept in, and it was even bigger than the other two. It too had to go sideways through the doorway, had to crawl under it even. Hot, hot, it smells of the blood of a Christian, it said, Halvor immediately chopping off its first head, and thereafter all the others, but the last one was the toughest of them all, and it was the hardest work that Halvor had ever done to get it off, even though he knew he was strong enough. Now all the princesses came together to the castle, and they were as glad could be. They loved Halvor, and Halvor loved them, and he could choose the one he liked most, but the youngest loved him most of all the 3. Now Halvor walked around and sulked. He was so sullen and quiet, and the princesses asked him what the matter was, and whether he did not like staying with them. Well, of course he liked it, for they had enough to live on, and he richly enjoyed every good thing in every way. But he longed to see his parents again. His parents were, after all, still alive, and they thought that it would be possible to arrange. You may come unhurt back and forth again, if you heed our advice, said the princesses. Of course, he would do nothing but what the princesses advised, so they dressed him up until he was as handsome as a king's son. And then they placed a ring on his finger, which was such a ring that he could wish himself back and forth with. And they said that he must not be careless and lose it, nor should he ever mention their names, the princesses, that is, for then the glory would end and he should never see them again. I wish I was at home. I wish I was here, Halvor said, and as he wished, so it happened. He stood outside his parents' cabin before he knew it. It was dusk when they saw such a fine and splendid stranger. They were astounded and began to bow and scrape. Halvor asked if he could stay with them there that night. He certainly could not. We do not have the right things, they said. We have neither this nor that such a gentleman deserves. It would be best that he go up to the farm. It's not far. You can see the chimney from here. They have everything there. Well, Halvor did not think much of that idea. He wished to stay, but the people insisted that he go up to the farm, for he would have both food and drink there, whereas they had not even a chair for him to sit upon. No, said Halvor, I will not go up there before tomorrow morning. Let me stay here tonight. I can just as well sit in the hearth. They could not refuse him, and so Halvor sat himself in the hearth and began to rake about in the ashes, just as he did when he lolled about at home. They could not refuse him, and so Halvor sat himself in the hearth. Oh, sorry. They spoke of many, many things, and told Halvor of this and that, and then he asked them if they had ever had any children. Yes, they had a boy called Halvor, but they didn't know where he had wandered, and neither did they know if he was alive or dead. Couldn't that be me, then? Said Halvor. I surely know the answer to that, said the old woman as she rose. Our Halvor was so lazy and dull that he never did anything. He was such a ragamuffin that one rag outdid the next. He would never have become a man like you, master. But you can tell who created this story. I'll show them. I'll show them all. After a while, the old woman went to the earth to stoke the fire. When the glow of the embers fell upon Halvor, just as it had done when he was at home raking about in the ashes, the old woman recognized him. I do think, maybe I didn't clarify a bit here, well, sitting amongst the ashes and stuff was definitely a duty, that like a low station and stuff. The other thing is, they are effectively saying he just watches TV all day. Like, this is the folklore equivalent of that. Goodness, is it really you, Halvor? She said. His old parents were full of unspeakable joy, and he had to tell them how he had fared. And the old woman was so happy to see him that she wanted to take him directly to the farm and show him to the girls, who had always been so haughty. The form of the story is starting to become clear. Look at me. She went before and Halvor followed. When she arrived, she told how Halvor had come home again, and that now they would see how splendid he was. He looked like a prince, she said. We are sure he does, said the girls, as they held their hands up to their necks. He is surely the same ragamuffin as he always was. And as they spoke, Halvor came in, and the girls were so astounded that they forgot their smocks in the earth, where they'd been nitpicking one another, and ran out in nothing more than their skirts. For those not following, I think they're saying they ran out topless. It's possible they're saying they ran out topless insofar as they were only wearing like some sort of undergarment I don't know about, but I'm pretty sure the implication here is they are actually topless. When they by and by came in again, they were so ashamed that they had hardly dared look at Halvor, towards whom they'd been so haughty before. Indeed, you've always thought yourself so fine and beautiful that no one else could compare. But you should just see the eldest princess whom I saved, said Halvor. Against her you look like boat girls. And the middle one is even more beautiful, but the youngest, who is my sweetheart, is even more beautiful than the sun and the moon. I just wish they were here so that you might see, said Halvor. I don't know how we got to this, but Uncle Kitty says, what do turnips taste like? Kind of like cabbage, maybe a bit more sweet and maybe a little more intense on the cabbage flavor with the texture of a kind of squeaky potato, if that makes any sense. He had hardly said so before they stood there. Sorry to break that up. He accidentally summoned his princesses with his ring. And then he felt sorry, for he remembered what they had said, which was, don't talk about them. The farmer had held a feast for the princess and made quite a fuss of them, but they did not wish to stay. We want to go down to your parents, they said to Halvor, and then we want to go out and look about. He walked with them, and then they came to a large lake outside the farm. Close by the lake was such a beautiful green bank that they wanted to sit there and rest a while, for they said it would be nice to sit there and look across the water. They sat there, and when they had sat a while, the youngest princess said to Halvor, I may as well nitpick you a little, Halvor. So Halvor laid his head in her lap, and she nitpicked him, and it wasn't long before Halvor fell asleep. Do I need to tell people what nitpicking is? Because it has a different meaning now. This is the original meaning of it. Nitpicking is like nagging now on minor details. But when they say nitpicking, they mean like picking things out of your hair, like lice. Then she took the ring off Halvor's hand and replaced it with another. And then she said to her sisters, Hold on to me as I hold on to you. And I wish we were in Soria Moria Castle. When Halvor awoke, he was quick to understand that he had lost the princesses, and he began to weep and sob, and he was so miserable that no one could console him. Everything his parents suggested he refused, and then he bade them farewell, and told them that he would never see them again, because if he didn't find the princesses again, it was not worth living. What a thing to leave on. He had $300 left, which is not insubstantial in this era. He put it in his pocket and set off along the track. And when he'd gone some way, he met a man with a fine horse, and he wanted to buy it, and began to haggle with the man.
Well, I was not actually thinking of selling it,
said the man.
But if we can agree on a price, then...
Halvor asked him how much he wanted for it.
I did not give much for it, and it is not worth much either. He's a good horse to ride on, but not much good for draft. But it would easily manage your knapsack, and you too, if you walk for a bit once in a while,
said the man. And at last they agreed on a price, and Halvor laid his sack on the horse, and then walked for a while and rode for a while in turns. In the evening he came to a green meadow. There was a large tree in the meadow, and he sat himself beneath it. He loosed the horse, but did not lie down to sleep, taking some food from his knapsack instead. And when it was dawn, he started off again. for he would not allow himself any rest. So he walked and he rode all day through deep forest where there were many green glades that gleamed so beautifully through the trees. He did not know where he was, nor did he know where he was going, and he allowed himself no more rest than the time it took for the horse to feed, and for him to open his knapsack when he came upon one of the green glades. So he walked and he rode, and he thought that the forest would never end. But at dusk, the second day, he saw a simple little cabin, and through the window he saw an old couple inside. They were so old, with hair as gray as doves. The old woman had a long nose, a nose so long that she sat by the earth, using it to rake the embers. "Good evening," said Halvor. "Good evening," said the old woman. "What business do you have coming here?" she said. "Christian folk have not been in these parts for more than 100 years. Well, Halvor told them that he was on his way to Soria Moria Castle and asked if they knew the way. There's a picture of her. For those who can't see it at the moment for one reason or another, she's coming out of a cabin. It looks almost like maybe a charcoal drawing or a pastel or something like that. Black and gray. Anyways, she comes out. She has a truly long nose, like almost as long as her arm. She's leaning hunched over on a walking stick, and iconically and delightfully has a little black cat that's walking around her feet, which I feel like may imply that she is maybe a witch or something here, especially for her talking about having no Christian folk in that way. But she's not wicked, or at least presented as wicked in the story. People like the illustration. "No," said the old woman, "but the moon will rise soon, so I will ask him. He is sure to know. He has to, for he shines on everything." And when the moon stood shining bright over the treetops, the old woman went out. "Oh, moon, moon," she cried, "can you show me the way to Soria Moria Castle?" "No," said the moon, "that I cannot, for there was a cloud before me when I shone there." "Wait a little longer," said the old woman to Halvor. "The west wind will soon be blowing up. He is sure to know, for he gusts and blows in every nook." I feel like there's a joke there. "Well, well, do you have a horse too?" said the old woman when she came in again. "Let the poor creature loose in the pasture, and do not let it stand starving here by the door. But would you trade it with me?" she said. "We have a pair of old boots here. You can cover 70 kilometers with each stride in them, and you can have them in exchange for the horse, and you'll come quickly forth to Soria Moria Castle." As soon as I read that, I was like, I want to picture what a 70-kilometer stride even looks like. Wah! I'd be terrified. Halvor was more than willing to trade, and the old woman loved the horse so much that she was ready to dance. "For now I too can ride to church," she said. I guess she's not a hag then. Halvor was eager to get going and wanted to set off immediately, but the old woman was not in any hurry. Lie down on this bench and sleep, for we have no bed for you, said the old woman. I will take everything when the west wind comes. Straightway the west wind came. And it roared so that the walls and whistled and creaked. The old woman went out. Oh, west wind, can you tell me the way to Soria Moria Castle? There is one here who wants to go. Yes, I know that place well, said the west wind. I am just going there to dry some clothes for the wedding that is being held. If he's quick on his feet, he may come with me. Halvor leapt out. You'll have to be quick if you want to go with me, said the west wind, and they traveled far over heaths and hills and mountains and coasts, and Halvor was hard pressed to keep up, even in his boots. Well, I do not have time to stay with you now, said the west wind, for I must go and blow down a patch of spruce forest before I come to the fuller's place to dry the clothes. But if you follow the edge of this hill, you will come to some girls washing clothes. Then you will not be far from Soria Moria Castle. And so off it blew. And after a while Halvor came to the girls who were washing, and they asked him if he'd seen the west wind, which was going to come by and dry the clothes for the wedding. Yes, said Halvor. He's just gone down to blow down a patch of spruce forest. Won't be long before he comes along. And he asked them the way to Soria Moria Castle, and they set him in the right way. When he arrived at the castle, the place was alive. It was so packed full of horses and people, but Halvor was so ragged and torn from having followed the west wind through both shrub and bush that he withdrew and would not go up until the last day of the wedding feast. When they were to drink to the joining of the bride to the bridegroom, and the servant was to fill the cups of everyone, bride, bridegroom, noble, and commoner, eventually he came to Halvor too. He drank the toast and dropped the ring that the princess had put on his finger as he lay by the lake into his glass, and bade the servant to greet the princess with it. Then the princesses stood up from the table immediately. Who is more worthy of one of us, she said, he who saved us, or he who sits here as bridegroom? There could not be more than one answer to that. Everyone said, and when Halvor heard it, he was not slow in ridding himself of his rags and dressing himself as bridegroom. Yes, there he is, cried the youngest princess, and when she saw him, and she banished the other one, and was married to Halvor. Sorry, I stumbled on that last line there. I've talked about this form of story before. I don't understand why the other groom just gets kicked out. Like, what did he do wrong? Shows up and he's like, has apparently a relationship and gets along with these three princesses, and then some dude shows up and he's like, screw you, and they're all like, yay, screw him, and he's banished? He's banished. Oh, people like the voices. Well, thank you. Thank you for the positive feedback. I see that we're talking about fruitcake. I have the unpopular opinion that I like fruitcake, But I do understand why people don't. You know, it's not one of those things where I'm like, what is everyone's problem? I get it. I get why you don't. It's a strong, dense cake, which is not, I mean, it's a bit of an older style of thing. It has a different kind of concept of what sweet is compared to modern cakes, so on and so forth. Yeah, Uncle Kitty says, for me, it's that most of the fruit cake I've had reeks of alcohol and is tough as shoe leather. Well, I've certainly didn't have the toughest shoe leather thing, but I did make a lot of my own fruit cake. So when you make your own fruit cake, you do tend to be able to make it a lot more. Eggy's the wrong word, but that's the only word that's coming to mind. Just softer and richer. But you are right. I mean, it is dense. GS says, Brits love suet and everything. You know, I think that probably had more to do with trying to get enough calories when you were like a farmer. Oh, Jump Store doesn't like the candied fruit. I really like candied fruit, actually. I mean, fair enough. Nobody has to like everything. I know. Oh, I see. Jump Store was talking about blood pudding. I'm not talking anybody out of being kosher or whatever else. But I'll say, as a person who assumed he wouldn't like it, it doesn't taste the way I expected. It's a lot milder. It's not super like livery the way I might have expected. Though, I'll be honest, I'm not a good advisor on food. Like, I'm a chefy minded person, and so I can usually find something to love about most types of food. With some obvious exceptions if it's just kind of garbage. But just in terms of broad ranges of flavors and bitterness and so on, I have a pretty high tolerance for that kind of stuff. The only thing I've ever eaten that I just didn't like, and I've tried a few times because that's my rule, you got to keep trying it at least, 5 or 6 times, up to 10 times in different ways, because sometimes it's just unusual and it takes a while to habituate, was cartilage. I cannot get past the very strong flavor. I don't know how to describe it. It is kind of almost gamey, but it's not. It's very much a liver meat kind of, organ meat kind of flavor, but I do like organ meats. But, I can't do it. I've done like the chicken feet, the steamed chicken feet and things. All the more power to people who love it. There's nothing wrong with it as a dish. It's just cartilage is just too strong a flavor for me, I guess. Jump Store says, I think store-bought candied fruit tastes like dust. That's probably fair. I haven't candied my own fruit before. I don't know if I would recommend it. I mean, it is a better outcome, but it's not so much better for the effort. Tammy wishing us all a good night. Hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. That's right, it's American Thanksgiving. So as I'm sure Americans probably are aware of, Canadian Thanksgiving is in the beginning of October, and we barely care about it. Like, we do, sort of, but it's nowhere near the thing it is in America. We are much more about Christmas here, to be honest, than we are about Thanksgiving. But I do have a friend who is an expatriate from America who indicated last year that they, sort of missed traditions of Thanksgiving. So, well, I don't want to make turkey 2 months in a row because it is quite a bit of money and work. What I'm doing instead is I'm making a bunch of fried chicken for a bunch of friends so that he can have like a sort of Thanksgiving-esque dinner here in Canada with mashed potatoes and fries. And of course, because I'm a celiac, I have to make all this stuff. And buttermilk biscuits, waffles, buns, hot honey, because I really like hot honey on fried chicken. Cherry pie, because I have some cherry pie mix in my freezer I made this summer. And I have an ice cream maker, so I made some vanilla ice cream as well. So that's what I will be doing around Thanksgiving time. Hopefully the rest of you have something to do as well. Yeah, and Jumpstore talking about not being able to trust if sweets contain animal parts or not. It's a weird one too. It's the same kind of frustration I feel as a celiac, where like you will see something and you'll know it doesn't need to have wheat in it. They're just saving some money or something like that. And it's frustrating. Like, for example, nothing about the Cheerios recipe requires it to have the contamination of wheat. But it is contaminated with wheat, so can't have it. Whoopsies. Kicked my own camera. Well, that's probably not framed right. Lizzie Rose says, oh no, not celiac disease, tragic. Yes, a couple of years ago I found out I was a celiac. GS says, cartilage has flavor. I don't mind it. All right. Uncle Kitty says strawberry and jalapenos make a nice sauce for a chicken. Well, that is something I've literally never heard before. I'm now curious. There's a fried chicken place, actually a celiac-friendly fried chicken place in Vancouver called Jukes. That's quite good. But they have this maple chipotle dip. And I have tried to piece that thing apart. It's so good. And I cannot figure it out. There's something going on in it more than maple and chipotle, and I can't figure it out. Okay, well, I'm rambling now, and this isn't fireside rambling. Well, I try not to do that. I guess the case could be made, though. At any rate, GS says, I love hot honey and chicken as well. Yeah, it really works very well. It does work very well. I'm looking forward to it. Oof. As for me, well, I see Uncle Kitty says there was a wing place here that made them with strawberries and jalapenos. Oh, that's so interesting. I'm gonna look into it. Yeah. Anyways, as far as me. I'll thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everybody in the chat. Sorry, it's a little distractible today for whatever reason. But if you lurked or if you're chatting in the chat, thank you so much for spending the time with me. I hope you enjoyed the story. As far as me, I will keep the fire warm. You folks, have yourself a good sleep.